Hello and welcome back. I am here with my good friend Tracy.
I'm here with my delightful friend Amber.
Today's episode is brought to you by our Patreon member Caitlin. And for all of our listeners, make sure you check out our Discord channel because you are missing cool stuff.
Yep.
So, topic of the day is the Wheel of Time Feminist. Tracy?
Mixed feelings.
I feel like I just dropped the bomb in your lap. Tell us how you feel.
You know what? That's a fair place to start it because I think my answer, I mean, we were just talking about this a second ago, but like I have very mixed feelings about whether or not this series is feminist or not. I read this starting out when I was young, like 16, between 15 and 16 years old, I'm pretty sure. And that was in 1990, like when it was first coming out. And I read fantasy primarily as like a genre, and I was always looking for something that I felt like I could relate to. And Wheel of Time felt like one of the first series where I could see myself in characters that I didn't see myself in other places. And that was really refreshing for me, and I was excited about it. And now as I'm older, I'm like, oh, huh.
Oh, huh.
Yeah. But we live in a place where like I think like what was thought to be almost radicalizing feminist writing in some ways with what Robert Jordan did with having like the women with power with magic like in the 90s versus how we see it now where our perception of gender has gone through changes.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
I think the biggest point against the Wheel of Time being feminist, and I see this repeated online so often.
Mhm.
So, the biggest argument against it being feminist is a large portion of the story falls into this category of gender essentialism, where many characters kind of behave in a way that is a stereotype of their gender. So we
Mhm.
have the men being strong and needing to protect the women folk, and Rand is like, I could never kill a woman. Ah. And then some of the
Yeah.
women are very catty and jealous and backstabbing.
Mhm.
But it's also not limited to the characters themselves because the one power, the magic of this world that is inborn inside of people,
Mhm.
it's only male or female. It's
Mhm.
completely biologically determined. I guess some could argue that because the one power comes from the soul and that
Yeah.
determines whether you channel Sidene or Sidar,
Mhm.
but on top of that, my counter argument is that it doesn't leave room for anyone who falls in the middle.
Mhm.
So in the 90s, there was this big, I don't know, school of thought. I don't know if you remember this book, but it was like women are from Mars and men are, or what is
Yeah.
it? Men are from Mars, women are from
Yeah.
Venus.
That's what it is.
And the Wheel of Time really, especially in the beginning, like the first half of the book, feels very rooted in this.
Yeah.
But for
Mhm.
like on the other side, when I think of the Wheel of Time being feminist, I think you could make the argument that in the 90s, feminist icons were kind of slim, especially when we're talking about fantasy or in
Yes.
media, in
Yes.
books. And I'm just thinking of people like maybe Buffy from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or Xena,
Yep.
Warrior Princess, or
Right.
Scully from the X-Files.
Yeah.
But within the Wheel of Time, people reading fantasy are finding characters in this story that they can really gravitate towards. And
Mhm.
some of them are just strong female magic users, and some of the women are physically strong. And
Mhm.
I think some people just thought certain characters are cool because it's like, we refuse to wear the uniform of this world of skirts and dresses, and I'm gonna wear
Mhm.
pants.
Right.
So
Got to stand out somehow.
yeah, all of these characters really resonate with the fans of the books. And so many of them are just iconic women. And
Mhm.
while I don't necessarily consider The Wheel of Time a feminist text, I
Mm-hmm.
do think that some of the characters could be labeled feminist icons. And saying that, I just want to point out that they are flawed, and so am I. So I don't care.
Right. Right. And in some ways, I mean, Jordan gets compared to Tolkien frequently. And I think the fact that Robert Jordan included strong females to resonate with in the time period when he wrote it was actually, I mean, potentially an opening for other authors to like pick that up and improve it. I mean, also, like, the editor for his work was his wife. And I sometimes wish I could ask Harriet, like, what did you see, like, as a woman editor reading your husband's work? Because let's face it, Robert Jordan was a boomer. So, what ideas, oh my gosh, and he was raised in the South. We could throw a stereotype on top of that if we wanted to. I'm not sure if Robert Jordan fit into it, but sometimes the way his women are written feels like he does. And just the fact that they're like not in the kitchen, I feel like we're supposed to kind of celebrate. Like, hooray. And I mean, I do. I do. For me, it was really, it was kind of powerful. And I think like he didn't just write it so that it would appeal to me as a younger woman. I feel like Moraine is there as like almost like a female anchor, like an quote unquote elder in some ways because she is an Aes Sedai who's older.
Yeah, she's definitely a comfort character for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say that sometimes I don't rag on her. She'll do things where I'm like, girl, that was messed up. But
Mm-hmm.
I still love her.
Mm-hmm.
She's flawed, but she is this extremely powerful force, especially in the world of fantasy, where it's like, oh, I can see myself in some of these strong characters. But I
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing when I'm thinking about like what makes a character a feminist icon, my eyes like glazed over and I'm like, I don't know. I really can't say because I think it's easier to explain what they aren't versus what they are, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Like there are limitations.
Yeah, definitely. It's not just a character that's succeeding in a patriarchal world because
Mm-hmm.
a woman who succeeded where no other woman succeeded, like they can be inspiring, but that doesn't necessarily make them feminist. Margaret
Yeah.
Thatcher. But I mean, overall, like it's
It's a
nearly
little dig.
impossible for everyone to agree on the definition of feminist icon. I mean, it could be
Mm-hmm.
diversity or just someone who's really inspiring, or maybe someone who overcame something that the reader can really relate to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is where the defenders of feminism in the Wheel of Time would like gladly plant their flag.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm actually like I think I'm sitting in the same boat with you where I'm like trying to find feminist icon in the Wheel of Time.
I think it's determined to the reader, right?
Yeah. I mean, I do think that age, perspective, all of those things, I think we can't separate that from the reader depending on our circumstances, our backgrounds, our life experiences. Like reading The Wheel of Time can feel really different to a lot of people. And in some ways I still feel like it falls short of what it could be.
We've said it before, if we bring this book to our time right now, looking
Mhm.
at it, it's very slightly maybe feminist, very
Yeah.
slightly. But
Yes.
at the time, I don't know. I'm sure there are books out there that people would really agree on saying this is feminist and it's from the 90s. But again, I am not an expert in 90s literature, 90s fantasy literature,
Neither am I.
where the things that I read now are much more, I don't know, from the past
Mhm.
5 years or so.
Mhm.
And big changes, big
Mhm.
changes. Whew.
I mean, so for me as like a 16-year-old girl looking for something to read, like getting a Egwene right off the bat who was like, I'm going with you. You can't stop me. Venture away.
Chat's head is going to explode at the mention of Egwene because they've already been talking about it.
I know. I know. I know. I don't disagree. Like that's just it. It's like I don't disagree.
Yeah, I think the appeal of Egwene is she's pretty much the first.
Mhm.
She's young.
Mhm.
She kind of like imprints on you, like, oh,
She
she's
does.
she's the first, so you're happily kind of like following her around, and it's easy to find comfort in that, especially when you have an emotional attachment to the series, because
Mhm.
I mean, even just the Ravens chapter, like
Oh my
little
gosh.
tiny young Egwene
So
who
good.
no matter what has to be the best at everything. It can be inspiring for people. Like, am
Mhm.
I a big fan of Egwene? Not particularly, but
Mhm.
I'm not going to berate someone who really enjoys her. I'll keep my opinions private, but
Oh, why?
should we get into
Mm.
spoilers right now? Because I feel like this might be kind of hard. Okay,
Let's do it. Let's do it. Spoilers ahead. This
spoilers
is your
ahead.
warning.
You've been
Spoilers,
warned.
let's go.
Let's go.
I like Caitlin's comment. Just that Gwen reminded her of girls that she knew that were fair weather friends.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It rings true.
One could even make the argument that Lanfear is a feminist character because she's searching for a gender neutral power source. But my argument to that is she's also a predator, like following around a teenage boy,
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
seduce him, which is ick.
Yes. Yes. Like just like she knows it's wrong to the point she disguises herself because she's like, oh man, I'm a full grown woman. That's gonna be a barrier. How weird. I'll make myself look
Right?
like I'm 16 or 17. That'll do it. I got it.
Ugh,
Land
that's
fear.
she catfished a teenager. She tried to,
Mm-hmm.
anyways.
Miss Celine has entered the chat. Yes, she has. I mean, seriously, I cannot. I How often do we talk about that moment with her in Rand's shirt, and she's like, "Oh, Rand, how 90s is that? How 90s is that? All she's missing is like a choker."
I just like put my hands up to my face. I'm like rubbing my eyes. Ugh.
And I mean, looking back at it now, it's so cringy. At the time, didn't even think twice about it. It was just part of the story. Like it, and somehow it made sense to me. She would want to appear the age of Rand, but not for the reasons that I think of now. When you were talking about Lanfear searching for a source of power that would be gender free,
Mm-hmm.
that does seem really cool, but I don't think her motives,
Exactly.
it was for her. Like she was just pissed that she couldn't have as much power as the dudes because there was this weird ceiling. And even though she could be the most powerful among the women, that wasn't good enough for her. And okay, yeah, I totally get that. But it wasn't like, I want this so everyone can be on equal footing. Like it was, I want this so I can skyrocket ahead of you suckers. Like,
That's how I interpreted it myself.
mm-hmm.
But I'm sure there are. See, this is why we need. This is why it's a dialogue. Because there are people that adore Lanfear. I will never be one of them, but
Mm-mm.
I would love, like, the argument. The people that love her. Why? Why would you? I mean, is it just because she's hot and
I
you read
mean,
the series
maybe,
when you were a 15-year-old boy and you were like,
right?
yeah, love her.
Yeah, I mean, think about the primarily male demographic that fantasy is directed towards. I
Yes.
think we're only now moving into a period where we recognize the need for, oh, I don't know, not sexualizing, brutalizing women in our literature for no good reason. I like seeing the advancement, but I mean, it's the split is still there, the drive is still there, and it's, I don't know, it's why it's kind of fun to look at this because it can be so divisive how people see it, how they want to have it seen. Sorry, Caitlin's comment. Cops, Game of Thrones. Cops. Yes. Audiences are perceived to want their content. And I think in some ways, as much as like those graphic scenes can get attention, Robert Jordan really doesn't do anything in his novels that few exceptions. There's not a lot of graphic or gratuitous sex in The Wheel of Time. It's just not there. And what is there is like a tiny drop compared to the entire series. And I mean, some of it could definitely be cut.
Yeah, but I also think that this is a an American thing.
Yeah.
We're totally okay with seeing someone like getting their throat slit, but
Mm-hmm.
oh no, boobies, like kids, close your eyes. You're only allowed to look at those when you're breastfeeding child. Like now that you're 14, And
Let's
I
just
mean,
always
like,
sexualize breasts. Let's just always
right.
do that.
People have children. That's where they come from.
Right?
There's
I'm pretty sure.
nothing like dirty about that.
No,
This is the world,
this is how it goes.
I'm not saying that that's the same thing as a brothel scene because
Right.
it's not. But with what Jordan did, I think he kept everything fairly family friendly. And
Mm-hmm.
when something really messed up happens, it's implied, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
kind of like,
Mm-hmm. In your face.
except when we get to the chapters where we're dealing with warfare.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is one of the things too, because I think that his time in actual wars
Yep. Mm-hmm.
changed him. So it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like glorifying it. It was like,
Mm-mm.
no, this is awful. This is horrible. And
Mm-hmm.
this is what it does to people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So people who are like celebrating Ashaman kill because it's cool,
Right.
I understand because I know that there are people like that out there.
Right.
But I don't think that he was trying to make Mazrim Taim like I
Mm-mm.
don't know. I wonder if he thought that those two words were going to just have people rabid. Like, we love it. It's so cool. It's awesome. We don't know. We don't know.
Mm-hmm. I can see where that intent could be there, but I also think that there's so much carnage that goes along with that order that maybe there's also an intention of just like remember the brutality that comes along with an order like that. Like it might sound badass, but then start thinking about the death toll that goes along with that. They may be your enemies, but they're humans. Like that affects you.
Yeah. Despite it all, like I still get chills when I read that.
Right. Yeah,
I
same.
can't help it. It's just it's really powerful and
Mhm.
thought-provoking, especially because you essentially later on find out who Mazrim Taim really is and what he's really doing. But when it shows up, you're like, he's one of the good guys. He's really helping Rand, especially in a time when our poor Randall Thor is helpless and he
Mhm.
has been abused and tortured, and finally someone shows up who's going to end it all. And as the reader, you're seeing this through the eyes of Rand and through the
Mhm.
eyes of everyone who is fighting for him, trying to save him.
Mhm.
And you're hoping and praying that it's
Mhm.
going to be okay, that Rand's going to get free. So when it does happen, you can kind of like feel this wave of relief. And I can understand why that would be so cool to hear
Mhm.
those words and think that it's fun and exciting.
Yeah. But it's terrifying. It's terrifying. Like a force like that, the idea of it, it's fucking terrifying. Mass destruction. But
Hmm.
back to feminism.
Let's talk about the show because I feel like this is the goal of possibly one of the goals, not the goal. They want to make an exciting, entertaining story, but I think they also want to come into this and smooth away the edges of what makes it not feminist.
Mm-hmm.
But again, with that black and white Sidene Sidar
Mm-hmm.
magic system,
Mm-hmm.
that's a tricky, tricky thing if we want to be completely inclusive.
Mm-hmm. Can you make that possible in this case?
Right. There are ways you could do it where, like, for example, the old powers, like Wolf Brother, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe someone who has viewings like men, you could say,
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, well, like, people could be like this, but then you're excluding those people from being channelers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like separate isn't equal.
Right. Yeah. Because then they don't even get included at all. You don't. Sorry.
Sorry, you can't channel.
Just it's not ever going to be for you. I mean, it's already a fairly selective thing that seems to be fading out. That actually kind of ties into what Caitlin asked, where is the world feminist? Ask yourself this, take out the Aes Sedai, and is the world still feminist?
No.
Yeah, and that's like I'm wondering also like would that mean that there's no magic system at all?
Well, there's still, if you take out the channelers, there's still quote unquote magic users.
Uh-huh.
Like Wolf Brothers or Wolfkin have no attachment to the one power. So we are told that's not to say that the exposition that we're given in the books isn't wrong because it could be. It's coming from other characters like Aes
Mm-hmm.
Sedai who are saying, no, it's something different, but they
Mm-hmm.
might not know. But there's people like that. There are other, I want to say, like types of magic in this world because the Dark One obviously has his own brand of magic. That magic system is not determined by gender at all.
Uh-huh.
So it kind of sucks if you're like, oh, okay, well, like, this is the only gender free channeling type magic that we have, but it comes from evil. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems mildly loaded in its own way, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like the only way to achieve equality and channeling is to go to the dark one? Hmm.
Right.
Hmm. Huh.
Right.
I don't care that much about my soul. Let's go.
Right. The
Ah.
Ogier have a certain type of magic within the setting, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I mean the ability to tracing, like that's pretty cool. And
Yeah.
that has nothing to do with the one power. On the flip side of that, like the removal of Aes Sedai, I don't think necessarily negates some of the other communities in the Wheel of Time that we see that are based on women in positions of power and like the sea folk. I think whether you can channel or not, you still have the sail mistresses, the wind finders, like all those people still have their roles whether or not they can channel. Like they have to work up to a certain level. It's a bonus if your wind finder can channel, but you don't have to be able to be a good wind finder. The Aiel, the wise ones, Fardaris Mai, like you have warrior women societies.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that could be kind of, rolling over to the side of it being feminist, where it's like, yeah, there are societies where the women are treated as equals, and that's cool. But at the same time, we still have violence against women in the Wheel of
yeah.
Time. We still
Yeah.
have oppression against women in the Wheel of
Mhm.
Time. We
Mhm.
still have just something as simple as like, yeah, there's a women's circle, but that doesn't mean that they're not contested by the men of the village, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like they have to
Mm-hmm.
fight. They're still fighting for scraps. So like while the world
Yeah.
does have more of like a matriarchal feel in certain spaces,
Mm-hmm.
it's not equal
Mm-mm.
overall.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, just look at the white cloaks. They're running around like
Yes, thank you.
total weasels.
Well, I mean, that's another area where it's like one of their objectives is to specifically hunt down women who can channel slash do magic slash are witches.
Yeah, and the magic thing isn't even a whole part of it. Like I just think that they
Mm-hmm.
hate women in general. Like sure they're
Yeah.
based on like oh, like nobody should do magic. They're not running around rounding up male channelers. They are solely
No.
focused on the women.
Yeah. And I mean, there's that one, we just got to that scene not too long ago in The Shadow Rising where the guy was Bornhald.
Bornhald.
Yeah, so where Bornhald like mentally makes a note to himself that he cannot leave one of his soldiers alone with the women prisoners. And we all know why. We know why.
Right. And these are children. These are
They're
children.
children. Yeah. And that, I mean, we know that that's not going to stop him. You know, like he's going to have to be kept away from them. Like other people are
Hmm.
probably going to have to be identified who might keep him from doing it rather than helping because this is a group of white cloaks and who knows what the fuck they're going to do. They're inquisitors. That's who they are. And that's scary because I mean, when you look at what was done to women historically by inquisitors, it's terrifying. I mean, what is in the TV show? Even Valda is like burning a woman and having some fancy dinner.
In the books, like it's at a 6, 7, and in the show, like they dialed it up to a 12. Not
Yeah.
only are the White Cloaks scary, they are reprehensible. And I mean,
Yep.
even with the scene of Egwene getting stripped naked and scrubbed down, and it's so degrading, so
Yep.
degrading. And
Yep.
I think it is violence
Mm-hmm.
against a woman. They've incorporated some things that I think are a little bit more forward thinking, but they weren't afraid to take the HBO route and be like, all right, we're going to make this guy so disgusting, so
Mm-hmm.
terrifying that you know for a
Mm-hmm.
fact he's probably going to be like one of the bigger baddies of the series.
Mm-hmm.
Just talking to people who haven't even read the books. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what's up with the people on the boat at the end of season 1.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure. But the White Cloaks, those are the bad guys. Those are who you
Mm-hmm.
need to watch out for.
Yeah. I do appreciate that there is like that moment where Moraine is being inspected by Eamon Valda and the other soldier that's there is like kinder and more open-minded and like even suggests that she finds an Aes Sedai to heal her wound, which is like so not White Cloak behavior. But in some ways it's good to know that there are like sides. There are
Hmm.
factions in so many places. And that's another thing that I think the Wheel of Time does really well is like give us factions. I mean, it can be annoying sometimes, but it's fun.
There have been some really fun things that the show has done.
Mhm.
And I think with the Dragon Reborn, it could be a male, it could be a female. We don't
Right.
know. I
Uh,
think as much as it for a book reader stance where it's like, no, like to the lore, that doesn't make full, total, clear sense to me. But for someone who doesn't read the books, it kind of opens you up into the story where you're like, oh, okay, like they're not immediately excluding the women from being the
mhm.
savior, which is
Right.
nice. It's
Yeah.
nice, but it's hard to take my book reader glasses off for that one.
Yeah. It really is. I struggle. I do have to say that scene, like our opening scene or episode for season 1 where Moraine is like channeling and lands just like kind of behind her looking amazing and deadly, and I fucking love it. In the midst of this like assault on her and the two or Emmons Field and whatnot, and she gets hit with that dagger, and Lan's like, there are too many. The look Rosamund Pike gives him just screams, the fuck there are. She like pulls the dagger out, stands up, rips the wine spring apart, decimates the Trollocs, and does this all like basically in a matter of minutes. Like giving a woman singular alone the power to do that in an opening episode. I thought it was really smart. It told a lot about what we can see these women doing. Like if one woman alone can do this, I liked it.
Well, it was a nice difference between the books to actually see that play out instead of just kind of fast forwarding through it, like what happens on page, where it's like, oh, we didn't get to see the two rivers fighting because we were too busy like seeing things from Rand's point of view, which is nice,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the avenue of television, because you don't have to deal with just, is it a male point of view, is it a female point of view, like you're overlooking everything and it's
Mm-hmm.
not the same.
Agreed. I was answering the question that we have going in chat about so like the idea of splitting. Caitlin said Caitlin said if they make the dragon a woman, she's going to quit. She's done watching it. I mean I don't blame you, Caitlin. I get it. But I do have to wonder if they're leaving room to split the role of the dragon. Like give us one character female, one character male, and create more of either balance. I know,
Boo.
I know. I don't like it either. I don't like it either. I'm not saying that I want to see this happen. I'm just wondering. Okay, so Amber says no. Amber says no to this idea.
All joking aside, no. I don't think that that was ever really an option. I just think that they wanted to frame the first season around the mystery of it
Mhm.
all. So like it works really well in that aspect because it's like, is it a guy? Is it a girl? We don't know. Could be anyone.
Yeah.
Could be your mom. It could be your dad. It could be Narg.
Be your
We don't know.
Call me dragon, dear. Call me dragon. I love that.
The show has actually done some things that I think are so much better than the books, especially like when we're dealing with the relationships between the Aes Sedais and the Warders and making
Yeah.
it a little bit more like egalitarian, where like, let's be honest, in the books, the Warders are kind of treated like dirt. It's like, hey, you over there, like, go do my dirty work. My back's up against a wall. I had to do these three oaths and I can't really kill people, but they can be imposed upon by the will of the Aes Sedai and kind of like forced into stuff with this, I don't know, kind of like telepathic push almost. But the way that they did it in the show, it was so refreshing where it was like, no, like we're a unit, we're a team, we work together. And I mean, I know that a lot of that is not only in the writing of the episodes itself, but in the acting, the relationships between the actors, Rosamund Pike and Daniel Henney, just, ugh, chef's kiss. Mwah, mwah.
I really just watched this show for them. Their interactions in the first episode were so good. They were so good. That bathtub scene, so good. And not just for like the shot from behind scene of Daniel Henney. Like just they are comfortable with each other. They are comrades. It's not sexual.
And Alana and her warders,
Oh my gosh.
this is a big question mark for me because in the books, Rand's relationship between he and Elaine, Min, and Avienda, it's a little bit yuck because it's like, oh, the pattern willed it. This
Mm-hmm.
guy gets to have three wives, basically. Like, good
Right.
for him. But they are stuck in this relationship that some of them don't even necessarily want to be in, it seems. They're like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
oh, the prophecy and the pattern, it made me do it. I can't control myself. I have to love him. So, like, Lucky Rand just gets 3 wives. Cool. So, like,
Yeah.
I don't know how the television show is going to approach this, even though knowing that Rafe Judkins has said, like, they're going to explore it more as a polyamorous
Mm-hmm.
relationship where it's kind of like more on equal terms between all of the partners.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, it kind of feels like either all of them are able to be in relationships with other people and Rand,
Mm-hmm.
or they are all in the relationship kind of together.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
Like Avienda, she's into Elaine, but she's also into Rand. And I think like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where they're going to take it, and it would be kind of cool if they change it at all. I would be happy.
It would definitely change a scene of Avienda explaining to Rand what Elaine looks like naked in her bath.
That part's funny though. Her
I was
hips,
actually
her
right.
lips.
Her lips are like plump love apples. Of course they are, Avienda. Of course they are. Would that then change Avienda and Elaine becoming first sisters, though? Like, in some ways, them taking on that relationship in the book makes it so that they will more than likely not have a sexual relationship with each other.
Do we know that first sisters absolutely cannot have sexual relationships with each other?
I don't know. And, like, that's kind of where, like, the questioning tone comes in on this one because
Caitlin says they can.
questioning tone gone.
You can do anything you want, so what's stopping them?
Yeah, I don't know if like with the way that Jordan went forward with putting Avienda and Elaine in a sister relationship, like our I think more often than not our brains kind of go towards, well then that doesn't include a sexual relationship, so then Rand is the only sexual partner for them.
I'm not gonna lie, when I read the first sister bond, I thought that it meant specifically like in their society, they don't have same sex partners.
Mhm.
Like they have first sisters and first brothers because like that was a bond even closer
Yeah.
than lovers or sisters or family. And so like when I read that, I was like, oh, Avienda and Elaine, they're gay.
Yeah.
So as I, kept reading it and was more active in the fandom, I was like, oh, like, okay, they're sisters. Okay, okay. But that's first where my mind went.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Okay. Caitlin's saying we're reading too much Western into it. And I agree. Like that's one of the things is like for me being raised as a conservative individual, sister means sister, not sexual relationships.
I feel like if I'm reading too far Western into it, that makes me even more correct.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. I agree with you. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I think that's where I was stumbling my way to, is that I agree with what you're saying. But again, like that initial perception of the book 30 years ago versus the book now, even 20 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, like maybe he wasn't able to say exactly what some of these relationships were
Relationships.
supposed to mean
Yeah.
because he didn't want to get in hot water.
Yeah. Yeah. And like this was just the best term to give it that wouldn't like rock the boat too hard.
Tatara said that ceremony was hella bi.
Yeah. I love that.
I mean, I know I'm not the only person who thinks this. I've seen it from other people where it was like, oh, that's what that was supposed to mean. And I mean, I don't
Yeah.
want to sexualize everything, but
Right, but I mean, when you look at that relationship, the dynamic so frequently breaks down to Elaine and Avienda, Brandon men. And in some ways, Avienda and Elaine are almost more solo characters than Min is. Elaine has an entire country to run. Two, actually. She barely has time to be pregnant. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, when she's got issues, she goes to Avienda. Avienda is a leader in the Aiel community as well. So she has these like very deep responsibilities, which, huzzah, like they have their independence away from Rand. Min almost seems like she's the one who's the designated researcher.
Fixer.
Yeah, like she's almost always there. She's the one who seems to be so much more focused on him than Elaine and Avienda, understandably so. But it is interesting how that dynamic breaks down. That there's at least one that's like all about Rand.
Yeah, Caitlin says, and I think this is really poignant because straight people do tend to see hetero things
Mm-hmm.
in LGBTQ stuff. There's even, oh my gosh, there's a subreddit called Sappho and her friend, because like we're talking about like even in history,
Mm-hmm.
ancient history, our real history, the erasure of LGBTQ plus
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's always like, oh, like, that's nice. They must be roommates. And it's like, that's how I was like thinking of Elaine and Avienda, where it's like, oh, they must be sisters. They're just
Mm-hmm.
really close.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I was totally like in that camp. Totally. Again, this is where like that not knowing where to stand on like whether or not this is a feminist series. Like reading it at certain times in your life is going to affect how you look at it, who you talk to, if you're going to be open-minded about it or not.
Mhm.
Like all of those things go into determining how you feel about the series. Like are you willing to give Robert Jordan like a little bit of wiggle space because of when he wrote it, because of his age, like things like that?
Yeah, they're not gay. They're just first sisters. No, I think for its time, I mean, even the whole like Pillow Friends, he was writing lesbian characters
Mhm.
for sure.
Mhm.
People that haven't read New Spring might not know that. And this is like the whole chunk of people that when the TV show showed Moraine and Swan
Where did
kissing, their
that come
heads
from?
exploded and they were like, not my Wheel of Time. It was like,
Yes, it is.
read New Spring,
Read New Spring.
read New Spring.
Yeah. For those of us who read New Spring, love New Spring, adore New Spring, seeing that
Live,
moment.
breathe.
That moment. Like seeing that, two thumbs up. New Spring is amazing. Pillow Sisters,
New,
that's one of my
New,
favorite terms.
New Spring is feminist. I will say it.
You know what? Yeah.
The Wheel of Time, maybe not. New Spring, yes.
Yes. You know what? New Spring stands alone as like its own like there's something so good about it. Even like I always come back to the woman who's like I'll honor you until you can't stand up or something like that. Like just like get it. Get it.
Oh,
Love
that was
that.
that landline, wasn't it?
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. Land in a
Land.
tavern in the
Can you
borderlands.
imagine if they got if they got
Stop.
Rosamund Pike to voice New Spring with Daniel Henney?
Oh no. No. No.
I'm just
No.
pantomiming, like stabbing myself in the chest. I would die.
I'm fanning myself. This is too much. My God, that'd be so good. It'd be so good. I mean, seriously, just that whole relationship between Land and Moraine. Like, Aiden was asking me about, like, whether or not it was sexual in any way. And I was like, no. I mean, again, I think maybe in some ways that is a form of feminism in a way that we can have men and women with platonic relationships, with relationships outside of mother, sister, brother, or mother, sister, aunt, whatever. Like your normal
Right.
roles that you push women into. We can have a woman of immense power with a man who is walking death and they can have a partnership that keeps them balanced without being a sexual relationship. And I think that that's cool because it should be possible. Men should be able to look at women like that. Like it's actually really pleasing to see a lot of the ways that it's being handled. I think it's been really tasteful. I think that there are definitely places where there will be shortcomings. Like we're at some point going to be like, oh, like, I mean, we've already
I
done
think the
that.
majority of the shortcomings fall into the category of them not being given enough time to tell this massive story. Yeah. But
Mm-hmm.
anyways, closing statements, should we wrap it up here shortly?
Yeah. I guess closing statement would be make your own decision about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. We're not here to
Like
tell you
what
if
to
this
think.
story is feminist or not. These are just
Yeah.
our opinions, and you're free to get on your soapbox and tell the world what you think. And if you find feminist icons in the story,
Mm,
good. So do I. If you don't, you don't.
it's cool. I mean it's still it's so much about the story.
Yeah.
And I think that's what there's so much that's like there that feels, I don't know, it draws you in emotionally. You get attached to these characters. I don't really ask myself if Elaine is being too much of a simpering girl when she's wondering about how she would look for Rand. I've been that girl. I relate to that.
I mean, everyone is free to love someone in the way that
Hmm.
takes on the more stereotypical, like 40s housewife, where it's like
Right.
the woman is there for emotional support and household stuff. Like, if that's what the woman wants, like
Yep.
deep down in her heart, like that's her choice. And I mean, there's nothing more feminist than saying like women have agency to decide what the fuck they want to do. So,
Ooh, that was good. Yes.